All right, welcome to another episode of Riding and Wrenching. I am your humble host, Q the Rider. And in today's episode, I'm going to give you my 5-minute synopsis of the 2022 Harley Davidson presentation on their new CVO and performance bagger lineup. So now I'm going to divide this video into 3 sections. I'm first going to talk about, well, what did we get? So we're going to talk about that, and then we're going to cover what we didn't get. And then I'm going to wrap this up by showing you the most outstanding Easter egg that has ever been found in a marketing video. In fact, I'm going to call it an Easter bowling ball. It's so amazing. It's going to knock you out. So stick around to the end to see what that is. All right, so let's get into it. Let's talk about what we got. So first, we got the Road Glide CVO Limited. It is extraordinary, and I really loved how they went over how they painted the bike, all of the intricacies and details. It's an absolutely beautiful bike, unless you have a problem with flames inside of your bike. But I really appreciate all the detail that went into making that bike look as good as it does. They also talked about the new seat for the bike, and it has a material called Alcantara, which is kind of like a suede-ish material. I'm really curious to see how that's going to hold up to rain and the sun and the elements that that bike will go through with a rider like myself. They also released a new performance bagger line for the Road Glide and Street Glide called ST. And it kind of embraces Harley Davidson's heritage with racing and combined with the new bagger racing series with shorter bags. It's a pretty good looking bike. I'll be honest with you, it's not something that I'm interested in. I do long distance riding and I cruise around town. I'm not real big on the racing thing, but it's really a good looking bike, and both lines have the 117 engine. That ST line also gets the Olin suspension, so that's pretty nice. And then Harley also released the Lowrider S and ST lineup. Now the ST kind of has, it has a fixed fairing, and it kind of looks a little bit like an Indian. I don't know. I guess that's cool too. I wouldn't mind having something like that as a second bike. That'd be pretty cool. The next thing they talked about was their apparel lineup. And I only bring that up because I've been in the auto industry for over 30 years, and there is no other transportation company, and I'm going to call Harley a transportation company, but there's no other transportation company that puts as much focus on apparel, clothing for on the bike and off the bike or whatever the way Harley Davidson does. And I really love how they regionalize it. So every dealer has its own clothing lineup. It's pretty extraordinary. So they change it every year. And this year, again, they had one of the designers in their video just talking about how they tie in their apparel line to their new model lineup. And I just think that's really cool. And then they wrapped it up by talking about an event that's coming up, I don't really know a lot. They didn't give you a lot of details, but they're calling it the Road to Harley Davidson Homecoming Challenge. And it goes from April through the end of September. I think that's what they said. And 120 lucky riders are going to be invited to participate in the Harley Davidson anniversary event in 2023. So that's going to be their 120th year anniversary. It's going to be all expenses paid trip. And yes, I'm going to participate in that challenge, whatever it is. And I play to win. So now let's talk about what we didn't get from this event. And number one for me is a redesigned inner fairing for the Street Glide. It desperately needs it. And no, I'm not just picking on the Street Glide, but if you're a Street Glide rider, that little cubby hole that's in the inner fairing for the Street Glide, what is that for? Do you need a place for your driver's license or a credit card? It's really worthless and wasted space. And then there's one that's directly, or it's on the other side of the inner fairing, and it's a fake one, so you can't even use that one. So there's no space in the Street Glide, and that's my biggest beef with the Street Glide. It's a good looking bike. I think it's Harley Davidson's best selling bagger. It's a nice looking bike. I understand why people like it, but I am a rider. I'm on the road. I need space. I need my bike to be functional. And that interfering on the street glide, it needs some work. You can do better than that. But speaking of the interfering, the road glide interfering needs to be redesigned. It looks old, it looks dated, and when you compare it to the Indian and the Honda, I mean, there's really no comparison. I mean, Harley Davidson needs to do something to make both the street glide and the road glide more competitive from a looks and tech standpoint and everything. They just really need to step up their game. They can maintain the heritage of Harley and embrace modern times. All right, so the next thing I'm going to talk about is the parts and service. How come we can't get any love? My 30 years in the auto industry has been all in the parts and service side of the business. I bought a Harley Davidson because of their service. Because before I had my Harley, I had a Honda. And I was on a road trip from Memphis to Milwaukee. I got a flat tire and I'm stuck on the side of the road. There was a Honda dealer a couple of miles away. I called them and explained to them what my situation was. And their response was, well, we don't have any tires in stock, but if you can find one, we'll put it on for you. But just be advised, we close in a couple of hours. And I'm like, okay, well, gee, thanks for the help. So I'm like, I'm stranded. I'm like, hey, you know what? There's a Harley dealer. It's 20 miles away. Let me call them and see if they have a tire. So I get them on the phone. The first thing they say to me is, well, are you safe? Are you okay? And I'm like, yeah, I'm good. And then they say, well, do you want us to come and get you? And I'm like, wow, I was blown away. And I'm like, well, no, I've already called the tow truck. And then they said, okay, well, we have a tire that'll fit your bike. We'll set it aside. It's yours. Just come and get it. Man, that was just fantastic. I traded my Honda in the very next day, and I've been on a Harley ever since, and I'm not looking back. I love my Harley. So give those parts and service guys a little bit of love. All right, so now I promised you an Easter egg. And I'm just going to roll the tape right here. It speaks for itself.
Everyone on this team is a motor company employee, and we wanted to do this to show what we know we have, which is the best motorcycle in the world in the Harley Davidson Road Glide. The best motorcycle in the world in the Harley Davidson Road Glide. The best motorcycle in the world in the Harley Davidson Road Glide.
All right, so I want to devote that little clip to one of my favorite YouTube content creators, and I'm not going to call him out by name, but let's just say he's a pretty tall fella and he rides a street glide, and I'm going to leave it at that. Those words of Harley's, not mine. So anyway, guys, that's all I have. Definitely go to harleydavidson.com, watch the presentation. It's pretty cool. It has a flair of kind of like the Apple iPhone releases that they do every year, which means it was a stroke of marketing genius. Harley did a great job. So again, just go check it out. This is Q. I'm riding, I'm wrenching, and I'm out.